Pastoral Family Counseling Certification. Book Summary. Chapter 1. What is co-parent counseling? Co-parent counseling should give the therapeutic community hope that there is indeed something that can be done for troubled divorced parents. A guide for divorced or separated parents which outlines what parents can accomplish in co-parent counseling. A family is like a puzzle trying to keep the pieces together, and it's the hardest job a parent will ever have in raising a family, but as time goes by things happen and the relationship ends, but should never end with the child. Social institutional support for parents and the implementation of a co-parenting plan is critical, particularly for high conflict cases where children may be caught in the middle of disputes between parents. Chapter 2. Have a plan, at least the basics, before you tell them. A lot of different feelings are normal. We all will feel sad, angry, worried, and maybe curious about the future. All feelings are normal. Parents welcome listening to all feelings and will try to help the children no matter how they feel. We are still a family, we are just changing. We will still be your mom and dad. Any model of long-term support for high-conflict divorced families should focus on these factors to produce positive outcomes for children and their parents. Chapter 3. An effective support system. And instrumental in providing parents with the necessary skills to deal with co-parenting challenges, the central tenets of this system should be to reduce conflict, assure physical security, provide adequate support services to reduce harm to children, and to enable the family to manage its own affairs. In order for such a system to be successful. Thus, it is a well-established fact that a child experiencing the dissolution of the family structure will do better if the parents are able to get along and reduce trauma in an already traumatic experience. Chapter 4. Red flags for more serious problems. If things get worse rather than better after several months following your divorce, it may be a sign that your child is stuck in depression, anxiety, or anger and could use some additional support. Be prepared for questions, provide short answers, then wait to see if there are more. Don't expect one conversation to do the job, plan on several short talks. Chapter 5. Children and divorce. Helping kids cope with separation and divorce. For children, divorce can be an especially sad, stressful, and confusing time. At any age, kids may feel shocked, uncertain, or angry at the prospect of mom and dad splitting up. Your patience, reassurance, and listening ear can minimize tension as your children learn to cope with unfamiliar circumstances. By providing routines your kids can rely on, you remind them that they can count on you for stability, structure, and care. Chapter 6. How much information should I give my child about the divorce? Be age aware. In general, younger children need less detail and will do better with a simple explanation, while older kids may need more information. Share logistical information. Do tell kids about changes in their living arrangements, school, or activities, but don't overwhelm them with the details. Keep it real. No matter how much or how little you decide to tell your kids. Remember that the information should be truthful above all else. Chapter 7. Provide stability through the divorce. The comfort of routines. Kids feel safer and more secure when they know what to expect next. Knowing that, even when they switch homes, homework and then a bath follow dinner time, for example, can set a child's mind at ease. Maintaining routine also means continuing to observe rules, rewards, and discipline with your children. Resist the temptation to spoil kids during a divorce by not enforcing limits or allowing them to break rules. Chapter 8. Key developmental issues. Parental priorities. Keeping communication open decreases the chance that emotional problems slip under the radar. It's hard to maintain normal good parenting when you are grieving a lost relationship and preoccupied with lawyers and court dates. Do your best to keep the adult issues separate from your interactions with your children, and get outside help like counseling if you need it. Chapter 9. Containing conflict. Some children go through divorce with relatively few problems, while others have a very difficult time. It's normal for kids to feel a range of difficult emotions, but time, love, and reassurance should help them to heal. If your kids remain overwhelmed, though, you may need to seek professional help. Helping your child through a divorce includes information on coping with divorce. See also tips for divorcing parents for other suggestions about communicating with your child after a split. Chapter 10. Define as visitation. The time-sharing plan should take into consideration what that child has become accustomed to, regarding the parenting style and arrangement during the time of the intact relationship. This is critical for the adjustment and stability of the child during the often chaotic and stressful period following the breakup. If, during the relationship, there had been a primary parent carrying out the major responsibility in time and effort, then such should remain the initial basis of a parenting plan. Chapter 11. Angry associates. Just as with death, when a relationship ends, there is a grieving process. This natural response to loss often contributes significantly to difficulties in co-parenting. It takes no less than 2 years to bring the grieving process regarding the breakup of the relationship to a resolution. This timeline is founded on the notion that a person needs to live through the first year after the breakup with all its holidays and occasions, as he or she moves away from the established patterns of the marital relationship. Chapter 12. That impacts the ability to co-parent. Typically, this internal process of detachment goes on for about a year or two before the decision to separate is made. Once the decision is made to leave the relationship, there typically is little or no chance of reclaiming the relationship. And, on the day that the first partner announces that the relationship is over, the grieving process for the second party begins. It is this timeline disparity that creates turmoil between the couple. Chapter 13. Open phone access of the child. Being a co-parent requires a great deal of skill. This includes the ability to listen and to avoid getting defensive. The ability to let your former partner parent the child his or her own way is a skill. It need not be perfect, or as good as your parenting style, but it just has to be good enough. It helps to understand that the child can benefit from what each of you has to offer. It is a skill to present a concern and let the other parent deal with it as he or she sees best. Chapter 14. Co-parenting support. Primary among these responsibilities is to ensure that children needs for the maintenance of meaningful parental relationships with, and the love of both of their parents, being shielded from ongoing parental conflict and family violence, and stability in their daily routines are protected. Chapter 15. Psychological, social, moral and spiritual needs. A stable environment provides a sense of constancy, predictability, routine and continuity, essential to child well-being. Children should never be caught in loyalty conflicts between their parents, and need to be assured that the care and nurture of each of their parents will not be interrupted. Chapter 16. Security, the feeling of safety, is another need. The expense involved is another factor, depending on whether parents arrange for 1 or 2 residences away from the family home. If the former, bird nesting need not be any more expensive than parents living in 2 separate households need. It may even be less expensive than maintaining 2 homes for the children, as the external residence may be much more modest if the children are not residing there. A 1-bedroom apartment or studio is likely to provide more than enough space. Chapter 17. What makes for successful co-parenting after divorce? Quantity of time matters, quality relationships are not possible. But although quantity of parental time is necessary for successful child outcomes, it is not sufficient. Children also need their parents to be emotionally present, engaged and attuned, taking an interest in all aspects of their lives and actively involved in their day-to-day routines. Chapter 18. Maintain a co-parenting relationship. The challenge for parents is to develop and maintain a co-parenting relationship that ensures that both of these essential needs are met. The challenge for both professional service providers and informal support networks is to support and not undermine parents in the fulfillment of their responsibilities in regard to these needs of children in particular. Chapter 19. The do's and don'ts. Do's. Commit to open dialogue with your ex. Rules should be consistent and agreed upon at both households. Commit to positive talk around the house. Don't burden your child. Don't jump to conclusions or condemn your ex. Don't punish your ex by allowing your child to wiggle out of responsibility. Chapter 20. Divorce is a painful experience, and one that conjures up many emotions. Not being in your child's life on a full-time basis can cause you to convert your guilt into overindulgence. Understand the psychology of parental guilt, and how to recognize that granting wishes without limits is never good. Research shows that children can become self-centered, lack empathy and believe in the need to get unrealistic entitlement from others. Confusion understanding the dynamics of need versus want, as well as taming impulsively, becomes troublesome for children to negotiate too. Chapter 21. Communicating with your kids during and after divorce. Both co-parents and the children must be equally clear about the rules and schedules. Their reactions to the new rules will vary according to their age and temperament. Older children may be averse to sudden changes to a family situation they've been accustomed to as long as they remember, while others are too young to understand what's going on and become used to the separate parents' environment as they age. The children's best interests should be the first priority, so be sure you and your ex know what they are. I would always encourage a parent to sit down and listen to a child. Chapter 22. Common sense co-parenting after divorce. Parents sometimes lose sight of the fact that they're divorced as a marriage but not as a family. They'll be co-parenting for life through events such as birthdays, weddings, and graduations. When they know they're in this for the long run, they're much more motivated to have good communication. Good communication among everybody involved, the parents and the children, involves both passing on information and paying attention. Always consider the consequences of the messages you get across, intentionally or not, and make sure you're always attuned to everybody else wants and. Chapter 23. Psychological Child-Adolescent Problems. Parenting conflicts are bound to arise focusing on the psychological factors of a child whom starts to show signs of depression, anger outburst and suicide because stressed out because of the parents can't seem to agree on things. Never have an argument in front of your child. Yelling at each other will not solve anything, and scaring the child whom just wants to see love in the home and not hatred of the parents. With this, more problems will arise. And possibility the child will go into a shutdown mode. Child psychological problems will start to show from the time parents separate. A child might start to show being depressed and being withdrawn, anger by stopping, throwing things, breaking things and even talking back and being disrespectful. Chapter 24. Parenting Adolescents. If you encounter a power struggle with your teen, be firm when setting limits, but be flexible and negotiate within the limits you have chosen to set. Provide logical consequences and maintain a positive relationship with your child. Effective parenting includes the following, including your teen in the problem-solving process and treating your teenager with respect. Allow them freedom within limits and use logical consequences for their behaviors instead of responding with anger or punishment. Chapter 25. One-on-one with child. When parents are separated or divorced, it's hard all the way round and nobody win and can hurt the main one that both parents love, and that's the child. A child will soon neglect either or both parents because of them arguing they do in front of the child, and shows the child that either parent doesn't have any respect, and the parents sometimes throw items around and worse yet being abusive to the other parent. The child may shut down mode and withdraw and go into depression. Chapter 25 continue. Honor your father and mother, and you try to teach your children that, but remember, when a child sees their parents arguing, even physical or verbal abuse, not respecting each other, they won't respect either of the parents. Now with this, the child will be disrespectful as well as acting up all the time and not caring. They're hurting due to the problems that the parents act out in front of the child. When you as a parent lose the respect of your child, you can only blame yourself due to your own actions. As the saying goes, actions speak louder than words. Chapter 26. Setting hurt and anger aside. The key to co-parenting is to focus on your children, and your children only. Yes, this can be very difficult. It means that your own emotions, any anger, resentment, or hurt, must take a back seat to the needs of your children. Admittedly, setting aside such strong feelings may be the hardest part of learning to work cooperatively with your ex, but it's also perhaps the most vital. Co-parenting is not about your feelings, or those of your ex-spouse, but rather about your child's happiness, stability, and future well-being. Chapter 27. Discipline. Try to follow similar systems of consequences for broken rules, even if the infraction didn't happen under your roof. So, if your kids have lost TV privileges while at your ex's house, follow through with the restriction. The same can be done for rewarding good behavior. Chapter 28. Dealing with visitation refusal. Sometimes kids refuse to leave one parent to be with the other. Although this can be a difficult situation, it is also common for children in joint custody. It takes a lot of work for two parents to get to the point where they can say their co-parenting relationship is actually going really well. For most families, there is much room for improvement. Rather than focusing on what's not working, though, identify what is going well so that you can accentuate the positive as work toward resolving conflicts with your ex. The following signs are evidence indicators of a healthy and productive co-parenting relationship. As you read them, consider what already works for you, as well as those areas you hope to improve. Chapter 29. Co-parenting agreements. In short, co-parenting means both parents work together in a cooperative manner to raise healthy, happy and well-balanced children. This type of parenting puts a large portion of the family focus directly on the children and requires certain skills that may seem elusive to some adults. The introduction of an agreement between both parents assures that everyone involved with raising the children adheres to similar values and works towards the same goals. No matter the circumstances, all parents and children will benefit from well-crafted co-parenting agreements. However, most parents who are still together and reside in the same home never think about implementing an agreement to care for their children. Some situations that commonly rely on agreements of this type include divorced families, parents who were never married and don't live together, separated parents, parents in crisis, emotional, mental, physical, etc., and teenage parents. Chapter 30. Follow through. Whether you are recently divorced or have been for some time, Don't be anxious that you have ruined your child's life. You haven't. While divorce can be a big part of your child's life, what will determine his ultimate quality of life is still in the hands of each parent. Can children be affected negatively by their parents' divorce? Most certainly. But it's important to understand that children are not necessarily doomed to be negatively impacted. Let your child know you are having a hard time and that you will get better. Chapter 31. When kids play parents off each other. If your child lies about what the other parent said and then tries to hide it, confront him with it. You can say, "I talked to your mom and she did not say that. I don't want you lying to me." When you do this, you are basically letting your child know that you are dealing directly at all times with your ex, and that he can't get away with playing you off the other parent. Here's what you can do to prevent their manipulation from becoming effective. Check with the other parent directly. If the other parent has changed the rule or the plans, you can either agree with this change or disagree and negotiate with each other as adults. Don't get into the habit of relaying messages through your child. If you have a message or question, call the other parent directly. Chapter 32. Co-parenting teens. Teens are like toddlers on hormones who want and need to separate from you. Parenting them under any circumstances can be tough, but co-parenting teens that move between two households presents particular challenges. The following are a few common issues that face co-parents, and some language you might use when communicating with your ex, whether the separation or divorce occurs later in your child's life or your kids are young and you're setting up a plan until they turn 18. It's never easy answers in parenting, but to do your best in teaching your children between wrong and right. Lives in general are not bed of roses and have to work hard in your life, and there will be good and bad days. Parents teach their children not to make the same mistakes they made in their own lives and want the best for their children, better lives as they grow into adulthood. Chapter 33. Tantrums and meltdowns. When a child doesn't get their way, they sometimes throw a tantrum. Will come as no surprise to parents that the most common problem that brings young children to the attention of a psychologist or psychiatrist is emotional outbursts, tantrums and meltdowns. The child will be on the offensive, even say out of anger, "I hate you and I want to be with mommy or daddy." Don't take this to heart. They don't mean it, it's just out of anger for not getting their way. Indeed, tantrums and meltdowns are among the biggest challenges of parenting. They're hard to understand, hard to prevent, and even harder to respond to effectively when they're happening. And when they occur with frequency past the age in which they're developmentally expected, those terrible twos, they can become a big problem for the child, not just the beleaguered adults who endure them. Chapter 34. Skills that may be lacking. Whatever the trigger, most mental health professionals believe that children who have frequent emotional outbursts are lacking certain skills that would help them better handle situations that cause them frustration, anxiety, or anger. One of the hardest aspects most co-parents will face is trying to move past the residual emotions left behind from the dissolved relationship. The separation process tends to leave a trail of resentment, pain, and mistrust for different reasons, yet in order for successful co-parenting to occur, these emotions have to be left out of the process. This is certainly easier said than done, which is why parents are encouraged to find their own appropriate outlet for these emotions: talking to a family member or friend, exercise, yoga, relaxation techniques, reading, and any other healthy stress-relieving activity. Chapter 35. Choose to think like Christ. So why does anyone keep arguing when we know it is wrong, and it is counterproductive? At that moment when we're tempted to argue, we must change gears in our thinking, allowing gentleness and humility to point us to peace so we can quit arguing. We must see that whatever we desire in no way compares to the abundant mercies and grace of our Lord and the life He has given us. Our thinking must focus on eternal values and Christ-like if we are to change and develop the mind of Christ, Philippians 2:5-11. It is the put-off/put-on principle, replacing our old way of responding, arguing for what we want, with humility and gentleness, that will help us to change permanently. Chapter 36. The Golden Rule. If there ever was a time to apply the Golden Rule, this is it. Treat your ex the way you want to be treated. Kindness and respect invite kindness and respect. There is a proverb that says, "A soft answer turns away wrath." If your ex is sharp and unkind, try not to return the same. Handle the situation the same way you would handle it if a coworker were sharp and rude. You would likely first give the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he is just having a bad day and it's not personal. If it continued, you might calmly but firmly call your coworker on his behavior without turning the discussion into a major blowout. If there ever was a time to apply the Golden Rule, this is it. Treat your ex the way you want to be treated. Kindness and respect invite kindness and respect. Chapter 37. Learn to choose your battle. If you're a nitpicker who constantly takes your mate's inventory, perhaps the problem lies more with you than with him or her. What's more alarming is that you may also parent your children the same way. Browbeating and berating a child is a sad and ineffective way to motivate, encourage, or inspire him or her to ultimately become the best adult he or she can. Be nice and respectful to one another, and your children will benefit from the peaceful environment in which they are being raised. Learn how to control your temper, manage your anger, and perhaps be a bit more compliant and accommodating, and you'll end up being a more pleasant person to be around in general. Chapter 38. Quick stress relief. Peaceful, consistent, and purposeful communication with your ex is essential to the success of co-parenting, even though it may seem absolutely impossible. It all begins with your mindset. Think about communication with your ex as having the highest purpose, your child's well-being. Before contact with your ex, ask yourself how your talk will affect your child, and resolve to conduct yourself with dignity. Make your child the focal point of every discussion you have with your ex-partner. Chapter 39. Respect can go a long way. Simple manners are often neglected between co-parents, even though they should be the foundation for co-parenting. Being considerate and respectful includes letting your ex know about school events, being flexible about your schedule when possible, and taking his or her opinion seriously. It might sound tedious, but if you disagree about something important, you will need to continue to communicate about the topic. Never discuss your differences of opinions with or in front of your child. If you still can't agree, you may need to talk to a third party, like a therapist or mediator. Chapter 40. 10 Commandments of Parenting. 1. Listen. 2. Start slow. 3. Accept your differences. 4. Respect each other as parents. 5. Anticipate and accept change. 6. Be consistent. 7. Seek smooth transitions. 8. Seek therapy, yes, together. 9. Create a parenting plan. 10. Parenting is a lifelong role. Chapter 41. Formulating a comprehensive multimodal treatment plan. A mental health care provider may assess a client in many different ways, such as an interview, obtaining background information from medical records or school records, for which the client has signed a consent form, administering questionnaires, or by using other, more formal psychological test materials. Assessment may also include interviews with a spouse, significant other, or parents. Spiritually integrated therapy. This technique supports the client in drawing on his/her unique spiritual beliefs to promote mental health and recovery. May include use of spiritual texts and/or prayer. May be used with all spiritual or religious traditions. Chapter 42. Parenting plan. Less competitive or fighting words and more collaborative terminology would be helpful in lowering the stress of an already difficult situation. For example, rather than using the terms custody and visitation, I suggest using the more emotionally neutral term, parenting plan. This term contains the more normalized concepts of a child sharing time with or living with each parent at different times. In a written parenting plan, sentences begin with, "The child will share time with, or live with, each parent according to the following schedule," rather than, "The father has visitation on alternate weekends." Even if the child sees one parent only once a year for a few days, the child is still sharing time and living with that parent during that time period. Chapter 43. Angry associates. Emotionally disengaged from each other. They are compatible combatants. They fight well together and thus remain in a destructive relationship from which at least one of the parties was truly attempting to leave. At least one of the partners gets stuck in the emotional process of divorce and cannot move on with life. This can go on for years or, perhaps, a lifetime. These parents are in a persistent and continual power struggle with one another. Chapter 44. It need not be perfect. That does not require you to like each other or to want to spend time together. It just requires an understanding that, for the sake of the child, you let go of the animosity and resentment towards each other, and let your child love each of you. Divorce and separation do not automatically result in the parents realizing that now they must work together differently from how they did when they were together. Do not expect miracles. Your former partner is not going to wake up all of a sudden and say, "Oh gee, now I understand what you wanted. I will act appropriately." A parenting plan is a map. It is a map of how the two parents will continue to raise their child. Chapter 45. Developmental stages from birth to adolescence. As they grow, children will experience changes in their moods and behaviors. Some of these changes are relatively predictable and, though they may be challenging, most are completely normal aspects of child development. In general, as long as children are behaving in ways that are consistent with their age range, the challenges they experience should not create cause for concern. There are many theories addressing the developmental phases that children go through, and recognizing these phases can be invaluable to parents and caregivers in understanding child behavior and developmental needs. Theory outlining the stages of psychosocial development from birth to adulthood is one of the most widely recognized stage-based theories. An influential developmental psychologist identified 8 stages in life, 5 of which take place in childhood and adolescence. Chapter 46. Medication and Therapy for Children and Adolescents. When parents are able to create and maintain a strong parenting alliance after separation, children have a secure base to depend on while they grow. Some families are able to easily maintain a strong alliance after separation, and others need support to create or regain a stable co-parenting relationship. Parents seek co-parent consultation at all stages of post-separation parenting. Some parents come in before separation to explore how to separate in a way that best supports their children's needs. Others have been co-parenting for a while and want to strengthen their co-parent alliance, improve communication and decision-making, or reduce children's exposure to unresolved conflict. Chapter 47. Benefits for your children. Through your co-parenting partnership, your kids should recognize that they are more important than the conflict that ended your marriage, and understand that your love for them will prevail despite changing circumstances. Kids whose divorced parents have a cooperative relationship feel secure. When confident of the love of both parents, kids adjust more quickly and easily to divorce and new living situations, and have better self-esteem. Benefit from consistency. Co-parenting fosters similar rules, discipline, and rewards between households, so children know what to expect, and what's expected of them. Chapter 48. Improving the relationship with your ex. If you're truly ready to rebuild trust after a breakup, be sincere about your efforts. Remember your children's best interests as you move forward to improve your relationship. After a divorce, it's important to redefine and restructure your parenting role because you are now 2 parents living in separate households. You also need to learn to positively communicate with your ex-partner as a co-parent and not a partner, regardless of any hurt feelings that may exist between the two of you. One factor in how a child will develop over time often depends on how positive the parents interact and act as a team. Negative interactions between parents can have a profound influence on so many areas of a child's development, from interpersonal relationships. Chapter 49. This is a very important quiz. Your yes answers are your most important strengths for co-parenting today. These are some of the essentials of commitment. Making co-parenting work requires energy and effort, and yes answers are good signs that you can make that commitment. They are all the driving forces that can make co-parenting a good experience for you and your child. Give yourself gold stars and protect your strengths. You have strengths, and so does the other parent. These may be hidden right now under the rush of daily life or perhaps painful experiences, but they are there. The quiz that follows is a way to remind yourself of your own strengths and the strengths of the other parent. Chapter 50. The goal of healthy co-parenting. Healthy co-parenting should give you and your child the chance to thrive, not just cope. It is more than setting up 2 homes and a schedule. It is also about how you build a life for yourself and your child, your relationship with the other parent, and your individual relationships with your children. As co-parents, you'll be solving problems, communicating, networking, making decisions, settling disagreements, and hopefully building a strong co-parent team. Most teenagers progress through this period of life with few obvious behavioral problems. However, a sound and trusting doctor-patient relationship is required to appreciate the inner struggles many adolescents endure. A working understanding of the developmental tasks of adolescents and the processes through which they are achieved provides the best tool for a pediatrician in evaluating an adolescent's development. In conclusion, final thought. Remember, when counseling others, first pray before and after the meeting. God will give you wisdom, and do it from your heart. This manual training course is to help pastors and chaplains in spiritual counseling of families in need for co-parenting and to bring harmony within it. May the Holy Spirit assist those whom help all those who seek guidance. Wisdom comes from the Heavenly Father and of the heart. This book is a summary introduction to pastoral family counseling, co-parenting certification. This audio is just an outline summary of the chapters within the book. You do not have to be a pastor or chaplain to read this book. This book will be a blessing and help for those in need. This book is found on Amazon for only $19.99. Thanks for listening.